Hi, we're just going to look at vegetable growing. Basically, what and when. A few suggestions on how to do it. We actually have a community garden veggie plot, about 3 metres by 3 metres. We've had that for 3 or 4 years, and you can grow lots of things there. Raised beds, good soil. Zucchinis, great grow. First time we grew them, we grew 4 plants. Too many zucchinis, lots and lots. Carrots have grown well, but carrots won't grow well if the soil's not really soft, otherwise they just break up into hundreds of fingers. Tomatoes, always a favourite. Flowers, weeds, we have oxalis in our plot, and it's virtually impossible to get rid of. We've grown corn, surprisingly interesting to grow. Grows well, you get 2 or 3 cobs. May not be the best value for space, but it's good to eat. They were lovely. How to grow. This is just a basic guideline of what we're going to talk about, and some lovely beetroot. Our soil's not that good, so we've used a bit of top up for it. There's numerous manures and soils that you can get to add on. Basically, you can't change things too much. Basically, just improve it. We use zoo poo. Zoo grow is probably a nice word for it. Good quality, reasonably cheap, and easy to spread around. First obvious question is, when do you start planting? And there's numerous myths and fallacies about that or whatever. Basically, it's trial and error. I suggest, for example, you should grow tomatoes, you should plant them on cup day. Although this year cup day could be any day, so who cares about that? But basically, once the frosts are over, you can start. If you're growing plants from seeds, you probably need to start a few weeks earlier. These are the ones from our garden this morning. Got some peas there, some lettuce, and some Siberian tomatoes, which I'm just interested to see how they'll grow. And they were planted on the 8th of the 6th, so this is basically 2 months later. Little hothouse thing is from the local hardware place. It seemed to work pretty well, actually. I was quite happy with that. Label them, otherwise forget which is what. What to grow and where. Now, when, sorry. This is a list from the local Food Connect group. There's numerous things online that will give you information about everything. And it tells you, for example, what to plant in August. And a little bit of information about how to plant them, how to grow them. And a little bit about rotation, which we'll come back to later, because some things don't grow well year after year in the same location. There are a lot of plants there to grow. Our community garden includes a lot of the local community, and they grow plants that I actually don't know what they are, but they seem to enjoy them. Where to plant? The 3 basic choices. You can either have them in the ground, which you have to dig up and break up as best you can, or in nice raised beds like we've got. These are fairly good quality ones. I've grown a lot of things in pots, which seems to be worth a lot better than I expected it would. Tomatoes do grow quite well in pots. The only thing to remember is to put plates underneath them, otherwise the seeds will grow into the ground, and then you can't move them if you need to separate them, because some of them will grow quite large. You can grow tomatoes in hanging baskets as well, or virtually anything. There was a segment on Gardening Australia about that a while back. There are some plants that will take up a lot of space, some plants that won't take up a lot of space. I've grown asparagus at home at our previous place, and it is good, but it took about 3 years before I actually got any product or enough to make it worth growing. But it is also beautiful. Tomatoes are good, and they will take most of your summer season. Brussels sprouts, we've grown them. Success, sort of, but not many. Pumpkins are great, but they take up a massive amount of space. Potatoes and melons are good. Parsnips are okay. There are some plants that grow quite well in small spaces. I've actually tried growing a beetroot in a pot. Actually, what we've done is not simply transplanted it, we've had it around it. Spring onions are good. Small plants, small versions of tomatoes, obviously. You can also grow carrots in that. I've noticed there's a carrot you can grow, seeds you can get now, which are basically a ball carrot about 4 centimetres in circle, so you can grow 10 or 15 of them in that. You would need to top up the soil eventually with a bit more fertiliser or manure. What to grow? Basically, you're growing for taste. Homegrown tomatoes, homegrown anything tastes better. So basically, look at a few constraints. Get ones that are cheap but hard to grow, or get ones that are expensive. You can get carrots at the supermarkets for virtually nothing, so whether they're worth growing or not is another issue. Pumpkins, homegrown, are great. They take up a lot of space, but you can keep the pumpkins for months, so it's a bit of a half and half on that one. Corn grows well, good for us. You only get a few cobs, so you've got a large area but not much product. Basically grow specialist stuff, and I'll go through some examples in a sec. How many types of vegetables are there? More than I thought. These are some that I've seen, some that I've grown, a few I've never heard of, and there are simply a lot more than this too. So yes, there are a lot of choices. I also have a liking for chilies, which I'm growing quite a few this year, and I'll see how they go. I'm growing the ones that are actually quite hot because they're fun. They're also dangerous because they really are hot. Seed catalogues will give you lots and lots of varieties of them. So get something more interesting than the standard one. 6 varieties of kale, none of which I've tried. 130 types of tomatoes, a number of which I've grown. There are more than that, but that's enough to start with. These are some examples of common vegetables but unusual varieties of them. Asparagus does come in a couple of varieties. I haven't grown the purple one yet, but it looks good. The butter bean, Cherokee wax beans, basically I'll put them in because Peter Cundall likes them. He's a great gardener. Beetroot, we grew this one. It grew quite well, but we thought they were dodgy because the stripes looked really weird. So we didn't keep them the first year. A mistake in hindsight. Capsicums, there are not hundreds, but there's lots of varieties of that as well. This is quite a popular one. It's nice to eat just as a simple piece of fruit virtually. Just eat them raw. If you want some seeds, I've got some. Chilies, don't bother the light ones, buy the nice hot ones. Grow the really hot ones, they're fun. I've got some seeds if you want some of them as well. Corn, one of the interesting varieties of veggies, more because of its historic history. It's actually one of the best grown or longest grown vegetables, and it's been modified over years. The original plant had virtually nothing on it, but they've now been modified, grown, crossbred, fiddled with, and whatever. And now you've got ones that grow a massive amount of corn on them. There are a lot of other varieties as well, including coloured ones. White cucumber. Haven't tried them, but there's a lot of them around. Lettuce, yes, there's 20 or 30 varieties of that. All that I haven't seen, but it could be interesting to try. The horn melon just looked interesting. I like watermelon, but again, they're another plant that takes up a lot of space. Pumpkin and squash, again, there are hundreds of varieties of them, and we grow butternut because we eat them. The Hubbard one we have there is one that grew on our farm once. Nowhere, we didn't know where it came from. Wonderful, but it took virtually an axe to break into it. Silver beet, we are growing them at the moment. They're great. The advantage of them is you can just pull a few more leaves off and it will keep growing. So they will provide a fair bit over a summer season. The tomatoes, as I mentioned, they're not just red, there's green, there's black, pink, yellow, this white one. And some actually stay green, which is the best when you're growing them because you don't know when they're ripe. You can always tell because the possum steal them, it's a clue. Growing in beds. If you're lucky, you've got a bed, great. We've got, so this community garden, which has got better soil than we've got at home. On the right there, you'll see a raised garden bed, which is pretty handy if you sort of can't lean over as easily and you want a simple bed. They're obviously more expensive to build. Wicking gardens have become very popular. And again, Gardening Australia has done a segment on how to make them yourself. Basically, all it is rocks at the bottom, you pour the water in, it's sealed, the water is wicked or pulled up by the plants, and it seems to grow quite well. The White Horse Council put some of them around the shopping centre area, and they look great. I was there the day they set them up, and it looks pretty simple, and this nice little drawing from some website shows you what they basically are. What to grow and when? Berlin Arts Centre and a lot of other places have lists of what to grow when, but this one has a month-by-month one, quite detailed, and it says, you grow these things and they grow well. And of course they sell everything you need. This is another one I found online, which is basically where we are at the moment. Spring season starting, what to grow. Over time, I think we've grown most of those. I haven't grown parsnips. Haven't grown parsnip or rocket, actually, you're right. We've grown some greens, we've grown lots of capsicums, tomatoes, chilies. We grew eggplants, but they were small variety. Didn't seem to work too well last year, but they were sort of just usable. One of the things you need to consider when you're planting is what works with what. Some plants don't work well. Standard thing with tomatoes is to grow basil with them. For some reason, it helps to grow well. Sometimes it keeps control of, or helps to eliminate some of the bugs that might otherwise come. Apparently you don't grow tomatoes and broccoli or cauliflower or corn, but we've actually grown corn and tomatoes in the same bed, and there was no problem with that. This is just a guide what to grow. One of the things you do need to consider is crop rotation. Some plants will leave their residue in the soil. Some plants, like legumes, will leave a lot of nitrogen in the soil, which is great. But some plants, like tomatoes, shouldn't grow more than once in a season, more than once in a year in a row in the same bed, because they will leave some wilt type behind, which will tend to ruin the next season. Like all those things, I've ignored that from time to time, and it has survived, but I've also seen at the community garden where the wilt has hit a lot of the tomato plants, and they're basically useless for the whole season. They just brown off and die out. So if you've got the space, look at that. If you've got a smaller garden bed, basically break it up into four, just put a plank or something between the four sections and swap them around as best you can. And the general philosophy, don't give up, just keep trying, see what happens, try your luck. And perhaps one of the more important parts is a bit on the right about food chains. It's an American version, but basically, when you're buying plants at the various supermarkets which are wrapped in plastic, in a plastic tray, there is something wrong with that. What you should be doing is just picking them and eating them straight in. That's it, done. Okay, thanks. Bye.